I'm here with Dale Meador from Cadence Growth. His strategic planning framework has generated $200 million in business value across 17 different companies. Most businesses are racing to implement AI without what Dale calls strategic context. It's like strapping a jet engine to a bicycle. While your competitors are drowning in random AI experiments, you're about to get clarity on where your business is going before you add AI in. And yes, we've turned it into a free AI coach that you can start to use immediately. Dale, welcome to the channel and thanks for being here.
Thank you, it's good to be here. What I've found over the past decade is that these 6 questions represent a really approachable starting point. Like any team, large or small, can work through these 6 questions and generate clarity for themselves. This is true for a startup. It's true for an organization that's been around for 20 years and has 1,000 employees, but still lacks clarity in many ways. You know what? I haven't even started the venture yet. I've got this idea. Great, let's work through these 6 questions as a starting point. It's because it could give you great clarity on which direction to take in the venture.
And we're going to be putting all the advice and the guidelines that you're going to give me in this interview, in this video, into a custom GPT so people can get at least a taste of what it would be like to work with someone like you using AI.
You know, there's 6 questions here on the flip chart. We're calling them the 6 clarity questions. And some of them might be obvious and some of them might require a bit of explanation, but let's just kind of talk through them in order. First question, it's really important to start by providing clarity around what? The date. What is the year-end date of year 3 from now? So we did this. We talked about this with you and your co-founder. What was your experience when I asked you that question?
It's just such a specific, almost clerical or like administrative question. You know, we did have to look at each other and realize that, oh, we don't actually know. Like, it's not instantly clear.
And I could have told you that in advance, but the value in that question was for the two of you to look at each other and go, well, what is it? And you went through that little clerical thing and arrived at that conclusion, which I may have predicted that you would land at already, but it was your decision, not my decision. And then we quickly checked it off and moved on. So first point of clarity, right? We have a date. We've agreed on what the date is. We're ready to move forward. Second question, in business, while we may be seeking to have impact and while we care about many things and there may be a sense of purpose and values and reasons why we do what we do, the scoreboard of business is intrinsically financial. And honestly, it's shocking in organizations how often a majority of the organizational team members don't have clarity on that. So the second question, once we've thought about the year-end date of year 3 from now, is simply the question, as of that date, what will the fiscal measures be? What really matters is cash. If you run out of cash, it's like you run out of oxygen. You're going to suffocate, right? How much cash will you have in the bank 3 years from now? We start with cash, and then we might work through, you know, what will the revenue be? What will the gross profit be? What will the net operating profit be? EBITDA? What will the after-tax income be? I mean, those are all examples of basic fiscal measures, and then there may be a few ratios that we might identify as well and say, well, we're going to focus on a particular subset of those numbers for 3 years. When you think of how much cash will I have in the bank at the end of 3 years, it forces a reckoning of an ending point. It's like a reservoir of water. How much water are we going to need in that reservoir at a future period to take care of the needs that exist at that time? And then I work backwards from that end point. Now, all of the activity that takes place between now and then is going to result in that reservoir balance. If that's the balance that I need it to be in 3 years, it's just a math exercise then to work out, you know, in some kind of rolling fashion, what activity needs to take place. How much rainfall do I need to make sure that the reservoir is filled up? And it provides clarity on the kind of decisions that need to be made even today. Like what needs to happen next is affected by the answer of that endpoint.
Starting point and the ending point, which helps you infer a lot of what has to happen in between.
Absolutely. That's the second question. What will the fiscal measures of the company be? Okay, so we've answered that question.
It's kind of like, how will success be measured? Before you even decide how you're going to arrive at that definition of success, you're just agreeing on like terms. What are the units of measurement almost?
Which is the next question.
Perfect.
So question 3. So now that we have a sense of what those fiscal measures are going to be 3 years from now, we can ask the third question, which is, what are the units to get the company to those fiscal measures? That, it gives you clarity on the products and services that you're offering. how are we measuring the actual delivery of whatever it is we're doing?
What do you mean by units? That's a very general term. Like, what could units constitute?
So it's the units of product, it's the units of service, it's the units of delivery, it's the units of growth. Those are the units that create value in some kind of chain.
So if I understood correctly, if you're a product company, that would probably be something like units sold, units moved.
At the most basic sense, yes.
Okay, but it could be other things as well.
And it could also be, within an organization, it could be functional units that result in number of units delivered, for example. So if it's, let's say, top of the funnel, what are some units that could be measured to drive a marketing function? Simply number of leads, or number of marketing qualified leads, or sales qualified leads. Those could be units that if we don't have enough of, would make it impossible for us to get to the fiscal measures we're describing. The units of delivery we have to find them, we have to acquire the customers in order to generate those units of delivery. So it becomes a marketing funnel discussion. What are the units that represent success in making sure we get to those fiscal measures? So it's all of the above.
So for a services company, it would be something like clients served, typically.
Or a number of clients, and could be number of billable hours to each of those clients.
If you just decide the unit is number of clients, that's automatically pushing you in the direction of acquire brand new clients.
Yes.
Whereas if it's billable hours, you're now biased towards, well, why don't we increase the billable hours for our existing client base?
And that's a conversation that you need to have, right?
Yeah.
So again, asking this very simple question drives that kind of clarity. I think we've answered question 3. So let's move to question 4. So we've got a sense of our fiscal measures. That's kind of overarching scoreboard of success. We've negotiated with what the units are that we need to have in order to get to those fiscal measures. Everything we've done to this point has some kind of numerical objective value associated. There's a date, there's a financial number, there's a unit count, there's a ratio or a percentage, some kind of very clear objective answer. Question 4 goes in a different direction entirely. Question is, what will the company be in 3 years? And so I would ask you to think about that in terms of, come up with a statement representing the answer that has no numbers in it. By definition, it's a subjective statement. We just talked about all these numbers, the state of its being something that doesn't have anything to do with the numbers, but is true based on the numbers we just talked about. In my experience, answering this question as a team or individually even gives you an opportunity to sort of do the first round of testing, because you might come back to one of these numbers and go, well, if that number is really the answer, that's going to make me look this way. It might go the other way. I might have an aspiration for what I want to be that isn't supported by the numbers. I need to change something. I need to make the number bigger, perhaps. As an individual, you might get to a certain outcome. Also possible that you might want to do that with your team and actually have each person go through the entire sequence and then bring those outputs into a conversation. Like, let's talk about what I got out of it. Let's talk about what your answers ended up looking like. Because then there could be some interesting conversation around, the divergence of, or the discrepancies there, or the similarities. So we'll answer that question. What will the company be in 3 years? Very subjective, very right-brained, very creative, but it is anchored in the objective. It gives you a point of orientation, how it connects with the objectivity that we've worked through, how it connects to a sense of why we exist. So that might be referenced in something like a core purpose statement or a sense of shared core values or something like that separately. But we're also looking for the statement of being representing a position in the marketplace. So it's really important from a strategy perspective, using a classic definition of strategy being, the creation of a unique and valuable position in the market that is sustainable. I don't know what's sustainable in the age of AI, by the way, so sidebar, but that's the classic definition. So we are looking for connectivity between the objective goals, numbers, and so on. But we're going to make it real by looking at what the actual addressable marketplace that we're serving is. And then how does what we are going to be represent an intelligent, strategic position in that marketplace that's defensible and sustainable.
What I'm gathering from this, and I noticed this when we did this ourselves, you're not really trying to arrive at a single right answer at this stage. It's more like a mini brainstorm. You're trying to have a few interesting possibilities.
Yes.
And then you move on, and then later do a second pass.
Absolutely. All right, so what will the company be in 3 years? I think we've answered that question. Great, so let's keep moving. Question 5. We've got numbers. We've got a sense of being. Now we're going to make it practical. What are the key capabilities we need to have in place to deliver on the first 4 things? And it's all 4, right? So there's a by when, there's a timeline component, there's a financial component, there's a objective and measurable formula to get to those financial components, and then there's a statement of being that represents that strategic position and represents a connection to why we exist. So what will we be? Now, okay, what are the capabilities we need to have in place in order to deliver?
What do you mean by capabilities?
My favorite definition of a capability is simply the combination of 2 other words. It's the combination of capacity and ability. Ability just means I'm able to do something, or as an organization, we're able to do something. And capacity means I can do it. I have the capacity to do that thing. So you put the capacity for something and the ability to do something together, and that creates a capability in the simplest sense. There's a lot of examples. One might be the idea around, let's say content creation. We might have a current capability of ability to create a certain amount of content in a certain period of time. And if we keep doing that, or if we grow it incrementally, that may be acceptable, but it may or may not enable us to hit the measures that we've set for ourselves in the timeline that we've set to do so. So then we say, well, how many YouTube videos do we need to create per period of time in order to get here? And maybe that number is shockingly large. So then we can ask a question like, well, what would need to be true for that to actually happen? The current capabilities we have may be adequate for where we are, but new capabilities need to be developed in order to actually accomplish the goal. So that's an example of what is a capability. It's the capacity and the ability to do it. What does the math tell us? How do I reverse engineer that? And if that's something we've never done before, if that's something I don't know how to do, then we can ask possibility generating questions like what would need to be true for that to take place? Or questions like, well, who do we know that has done that we could simply ask the question? When you start this, when you first ask this question, what are the key capabilities? Okay, we need to have the capability to produce a dozen YouTube videos a month or whatever that. Everyone in the room says, well, how do we do that? So the natural next question is a how question. And I hate how questions. I don't know what your experience with how is, but how questions imply that there's an answer that I don't know. It's like this, how, I don't know. It just creates this sense of constriction. So better questions are, what are the possibilities? But even I like the question, who? Who, not how. Who's done it? Somebody's done this, or somebody's done something like it. Let's identify who that is, and let's just ask the question. Somebody can help us do that. All of a sudden, we just created this lift. Who? Oh, I know somebody that might know somebody that could help us with that. Great, let's get a meeting scheduled. Let's have that conversation. There's not a fixed number of key capabilities that need to be generated here. In my experience, that list often has 4 to 6 or sometimes more key capabilities that ultimately represent the really practical understanding of what needs to be developed. And I think that's another word that's important as you think about ability to do and capacity for. Sometimes it's understood, but it requires a period of time to develop and work up to. If you're gonna go to the gym and work out, your capacity for things have to develop over time. You can't immediately go out and do a full Murph. It takes time. I think we've answered question 5. Let's move on.
The finale.
So, quick recap. We've got timelines, we've got fiscal measures, we've got units that drive that, we have a sense of being that can ultimately be validated in the marketplace as a context. We have a practical list of capabilities that are non-negotiable that move us in that direction. This is the basis of a whole bunch of planning, right? Once we have a sense of what those capabilities are, we can start to break that down in the timeline described and say, what are the milestones that need to be hit and what do we need to work on next? What team wouldn't love that, right? And it doesn't need to be like navel gazing around, what's the priority? What's next? Like we have a set of capabilities. Some of these we have already and some of these we have none of. What's next? Let's go to work. Finally is the question 6. What do we want to be known for? I think question 4 really represents like our choice and what it is we want to be, which connects with our purpose and mission and all the things. What do we want to be known for is specifically that externally facing answer. What does the world around us see? What do they experience as a result of us being successful at everything we've been working on. It's also a useful question to think about from let's say from an SEO standpoint. Like, what are the words that we want to own in the minds of the market we're seeking to serve? And again, it may not be an easy question to answer. It's not something that gets answered once and forever, but as a sequence, resolving around this externally facing, okay, if all this is true, what do we want to be known for? It's also a great check to say, okay, I want to be known for this. And if we do all of this, it may not result in being known for that. Oh, something's out of alignment. We need to change it, or we need to validate something.
Yeah, it's simultaneously a distillation, because it needs to, it's almost the end point of all this, but also, like you said, a reality check. Because if you put something down there that no one else would really think or say, is just kind of BS, like it's too pie in the sky, that's a reality check. Yes. Against what you're envisioning.
The reality to timeline, the reality to financials, it's going to be reality to, can we actually do that? And if we can't, what can we do to move in that direction? There's a lot of reality checks that resolve in this external facing, what do we want to be known for? Some classic examples of companies that have strong associations. When I say Volvo, what do you think of? Safety, right? That's one of my favorites, right? Everybody knows Volvo and safety. One tendency in working through, especially questions 4 and question 6, is to end up with a long list of bullet points or a multi-sentence statement that goes on. And while there may be value in those, it's best to really keep honing it in. If you use the GPT to do these questions, you want to keep working with it to say, boil it down. Yes, that's true. Now, can you say that in 10 words or less? How about 7 words or less? What's really, really, really the essence of this answer? I think we've answered question 6, and we've created some clarity.
Put yourself in the shoes of someone watching this video, probably a small business owner or leader. They're about to embark on this with the aid of this video plus the custom GPT. Any other words of advice that you'd give them?
So I would simply acknowledge that these 6 questions are not the only 6 questions. They represent a fantastic starting point. There are probably, 3 dozen other questions that are just like these that can really help create strategic context. Using the answers, so the outputs of this conversation, of these questions, and including that as part of something like your master prompt, or including that in the context of your LLM, only makes its outputs stronger. Providing this kind of context at that foundational level is going to make the quality of its outputs so much better. You know this. We've talked about master prompt generating. This is just another layer to add into someone's master prompt or into the context of their LLM.
Is that what you would recommend? Get at least the first pass, the V1 of your answers to these, and insert it into your master prompt or project knowledge, or however you do that?
You would absolutely want to enter it into one of those areas of context to be able to use.
Dale, thank you so much for coming on the channel and just so generously sharing all your wisdom and advice.
Yes, it's an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed the time we've spent here in the studio. It's a lovely place.
We've just taken you through a miniature version of strategic planning. What does it look like to generate what we call strategic context? Not just generate it for your own purposes and your own learning, but to supply that context to AI so it can draw on it going forward in all your interactions. If this is something that you would like to learn how to do yourself, go much deeper on it, and actually implement it in your business, I encourage you to sign up at the link in the description below. We'll send you our free custom GPT that we've mentioned throughout the video. And I encourage you to check out our cohort-based program called Second Brain Enterprise, where we work, me, Dale, and other instructors and facilitators, work directly with business owners and leaders on how to make their businesses AI first.